over, what to do, like as the beginning, but I guess a sufficient hello will actually work. Um, I'm Kushi, not a Kirijo, but you can just call me Kushi for short. And this right here will be, I guess, my rambling on how to play Warrior. I'm not currently fitted in it, so let's go ahead and actually get into it here. Okay, so Warrior is quite an interesting tank at the moment. It's mostly a tank that's really good at this time in the fact that it can't die the moment that it hits level 60. It literally becomes almost impossible to die, at least in dungeons. Like, you're still able to die if you're being stupid, but if you're realistically paying attention, let's say to like what you're doing, you probably are not gonna die. We're actually gonna very quickly just go over some of the abilities here, so that way we have an idea of what we're trying to actually do, and then I will do a quick dungeon to showcase what I am talking about, so that way you guys have an idea of what the hell I'm saying, because sometimes people don't understand and sometimes people need to see, because I don't understand anything by you telling me. I have to actually do it, so I understand. Let's go over our actions very quickly. So you have your basic heavy swing, maim into. You start off with storms. You have storms. You have storm's path, which is usually going to be the one that you use. But obviously, at later on, you want to use your storm's eye. It's literally brain dead. Like, I don't think I have to explain this. So whenever you're doing your combos, always make sure that your first 1, 2, 3 swing will be heavy swing maim into Storm's Eye, so that way you get your buff. You can do that like maybe once or twice, just to get the 60-second timer, and then you can start doing your Storm Path ones, which will be the higher of the potencies. Because again, this is 120, or rather, this is 400 potency once you combo it, and then this is interesting. This is why you look at things. So this right here will give you a buff, but there's no damage loss. So there's actually no damage loss. See, this is why I call it rambling, because I'm looking at everything. So you see the potencies of both also are 400, but you don't want to spam this, because obviously this will increase your damage dealt, but this heals you. So you want to use this, obviously. And it increases your beast gauge by 20, which is a DPS gain. So I guess that would be the reason that you would do it. There's not really much to say about Warrior. Warriors is pretty straightforward. Again, heavy swing, maim into Storm's Eye twice to keep your buffs up. Use Storm Path so that way you can get your beast gauge. Your beast gauge, initially you start off with Inner Beast, which is a 330 potency single target attack, and it's pretty good. I would definitely recommend that you use it on cooldown. So if you have 50, just use it. There's no reason for you to keep it. There used to be a reason to keep it, but now not so much. There's not really a reason to hold on to your beast gauge stacks, because previously Onslaught used to cost 20 beast gauge, and they have since removed that as of Endwalker. So now it's on a charger, and it's got 3 charges. So effectively, just off topic, Warrior has 4 gap closers, because you can use Onslaught 3 times, and you can use Primal Rend, which is also a gap closer. So keep that in mind, that technically with Warrior there is no downtime. If you're timing everything correctly, you won't miss anything more than maybe 1 GCD. But typically, in terms of damage, it is on the lower end, but in return, you get things like Thrill of Battle, which will increase your maximum HP. A neat trick that you can actually do, let me go ahead and show this right quick. I'll switch to Samurai and I'll switch to Warrior and smack this. So an interesting thing that you're able to do is if you Thrill of Battle, you'll gain that 20% HP. And what you can do is you can actually click on this to cancel the skill and you get the health restored so it stays. So this is basically free healing. Just from using it, you heal. So use this, and whenever possible, combo Thrill of Battle with Equilibrium, which, as of Endwalker, not only is a 1200 potency cure, but it now has a hot effect, so it heals over time. So that heal over time is usually pretty good. There's not really much to Warrior because it's one of the easiest tanks because it can't die. Because it's got healing from Thrill of Battle, it has healing from Equilibrium, it has healing from Shake It Off, which is the only tank that is actually able to heal the entire party. So keep in mind that that would be one reason to play Warrior, because this has multiple uses, because you can use this to protect your team before a raid wide, or you can use this after a raid wide to give everyone extra shielding, and then also heal them because it's a 300 potency heal. Otherwise, if someone's in like big trouble, you just use Nascent Flash. Nascent Flash is basically bloodwetting, but you give it to someone else. Basically, whenever you use any of your weapon skills, it will heal them for a 400 potency cure. So typically, you can full heal someone from dead, just about to full. So that's why everyone does the meme of, you know, Warrior's the real fourth healer, because it gets so much healing. You can heal off that, you can heal off this, heal off this, and then your combos heal, and then you're able to use Bloodwetting or Nascent Flash, and every time you hit something, you heal. So it's really hard to die as it, and I'll show that off, but first I want to show the rotation. First I'll explain it so that way it makes sense. Initially, what you're going to want to do, as I stated, is heavy swing into Maim, Storm's Eye, and then heavy swing, Maim, into another Storm's Eye. Now that's typically like what you want to do for your openers. Now if you're actually, like, let's say in a dungeon, or if you're tanking and you're about to take the boss down, you always want to open with your ranged attack. And there's actually a good reason as to why. I know I'm jumping around, but please just keep up with me here. So let me give you an example of why because there's a lot of people that do this, and I really just have to say to stop doing that. Do not open with any of your tanks using the gap closer. Just don't do it. Do not open with your gap closer unless it's like a wall boss. If you don't know, a wall boss is a boss that is stationary and just cannot move. If it can't move, then that's fine. Otherwise, just don't do it, because I'll give you an example here. So let's say this is a samurai, this is a monk, and this is your other tank. Like, say you're in a full party of 8 and you've got 2 melees here and 1 other tank, and you know it comes time to start, and you guys are doing your countdown, you know, your countdown to get ready. Let's lower that to 5 just for the sake of it, and you guys doing a countdown, and you know you got 5 seconds, and then whenever it comes time to launch, boom, you're way over here. You're fighting the boss, but your team doesn't know what's going on because you just sort of charged in, and now they're just standing there, and now you've cost this person their opener, this person their opener, and this person their opener. So now everyone is upset at you because you didn't just use Tomahawk. Because the whole purpose of using Tomahawk is to bring the boss to the center of the arena, so that way these guys, or all of the melee users, can get to the boss faster without having to use a gap closer that they would use for uptime. So in case in point, don't use your other stuff. Please just use your ranged attack. Unless you know that it's a wall boss that is not going to move, or if you know that that boss is not really going to be too much of a problem for the melee users, or if you've got nothing but range, then you have free reign to go right ahead. Now, the opener, you always start with Tomahawk. Into Infuriate, you're going to use Heavy Swing, Maim, Storm's Eye, you use your you use your stacks for Inner Chaos, and then while that's on cooldown, you're going to use Inner Release and just Fell Cleave repeatedly, because every time you Fell Cleave, if you notice, your Infuriate charges are coming back, and by the time you get there, you should be able to do that and you have another charge. It usually is a good idea to keep one on cooldown, unless like everyone in the party is just in sync and you just want to use your entire burst window, you'd be able to. But you want to do that, and that's like your whole burst window, along with using Primal Rend at the end of like your Fell Cleave combos. So that way you can make sure that you're taking advantage of everything, and only use Upheaval during your buff. Because this used to also cost Beast Gauge, but doesn't anymore. But just to go ahead and show what it looks like, I have to wait like an additional 15 seconds here. But you have an idea, hopefully, what it looks like. Because I'm trying to get the easy stuff out of the way first. Because the damaging portion, that's easy. It's the mitigation and stuff that I'll have to go into detail about. But your opener should be... Always make sure you use your charges and save one of them. Just make sure you save one. You don't need all three of your onslaught charges, so you need those ticking to make sure that they're not just idling and not being used. And that's your opener. That's literally your opener. That's it. You don't do anything else. You basically just play the waiting game until that comes back. And then once that gets up to the 60 mark, you just go back into what you were doing. Like, that's essentially all that you're doing. It's pretty simple. Like, Warrior isn't as complicated as, let's say, like Gunbreaker or Dark Knight, for instance. Like, it's nowhere near as bad. It could be so much worse. Also, you can use Primal Rend pretty much whenever you want to. You can use it as an opener if you really wanted to. You can use it literally to open a fight if it's a wall boss. Please don't use it if it's not one, because you'll make a lot of melee users pretty mad. But yeah, that's the easy part. Now, the hard part typically... Oh, I just now realized, I don't have any sound. I usually have my sound off. Just to, I guess, I don't know. Let's get some oomph into it. I don't know. We'll turn it down to like maybe 30 though. But now we'll get into the nitty gritty here, which is the actual tanking portion Uh, that one is probably not going to be as all over the place. That one will probably be a bit more concise because everything else is just kind of there. But I do need to explain this like in detail. So the first like mitigation that you get isn't really mitigation. Again, like I said, Thrill of Battle is more of just a straight heal. You have basically more health to survive fights. So you're not really going to rely on that. Instead, you're going to rely on your roll action, which is Rampart. Now, Rampart is pretty decent. It's got like a decent damage reduction on it, where it's 20%. You won't use it very often, but I would definitely get comfortable using Rampart because it is one of the better mitigation abilities. It doesn't offer anything extra besides just the damage reduction, but it does last for 20 seconds, so you can use that like effectively. Now, Vengeance, this is really going to be the one that you use the most, because the way that Vengeance works is it has revenge damage on it. Now, revenge damage is essentially any damage that you suffer basically will be returned back to the target who damaged you. And the only reason you do this is because it makes mobs die faster. So you pull the whole pack, you pop Vengeance, and while you're spamming your AoE combo, which by the way, overpowered, I'm not sure if anyone is caught up, it is no longer a cone attack, it is AoE. So it's just straight AoE now. So just run in the middle of the packs and just get everyone. But you use overpower into Mithril Tempest and then pop your Vengeance buff. And every time you get hit, you're returning damage back. And then while you're dealing damage with Vengeance, you're also dealing damage with overpower. Now, one thing that I do want to say is try to not make it too much of a habit once you're geared, but when you're gearing up, always pair a cooldown with another cooldown. So when you're leveling up Warrior, please just use Rampart on top of like Thrill of Battle, or pair Rampart with Vengeance. Just pair it with something, because using only one mitigation when you're not geared is you're gonna get melted unless you're pulling like single mobs at a time. If you're pulling like 4 enemies, please use one, but for the sake of the healer and making their job less stressful, please always pop at least 2 mitigations, because 2 is like always going to be better than 1. Now once you get Vengeance, the only real mitigation that you'll be getting is just really your raw like healing potential, along with Rampart and Reprisal. Now Reprisal is, I don't know how you really would say this. So Reprisal is an AoE debuff. So it's not necessarily a mitigation, but it is a mitigation, if you understand. So you use it and enemies basically get a debuff on them that will reduce their damage by 10% for 10 seconds. Now, that has multiple uses. You can use this on bosses to stop raid wides from doing a lot of damage. You can use this during pack pulls, so that way the enemies don't do as much damage to you. It only lasts for 10 seconds, so I mean, I really wouldn't rely on it too much, but if you've run out of buttons to press and you're dying very fast and your healer's not doing anything, it wouldn't hurt to press it. And then the common one that I will say is the most underused is Arm's Length. So arm's length is mitigation, but it's a different type of mitigation, and I wish they would have something like it more. Arm's length will create a barrier that will actually stop knockback effects and draw in effects. So essentially, you're immune to hard crowd control or hard CC. Now, soft CC would be like a sleep or a root or a stun, but hard CC is anything that displaces you from one spot to another, or hard crowd control. So warrior actually has the benefit here of having arm's length, which will actually stop the knockback and draw in effects. And then once you hit level 70 and your berserk that you get at level 6, which is just a guaranteed crit, a guaranteed direct crit is what we call it, because it's a critical hit and a direct hit that's guaranteed, so you do maximum damage with every hit. So essentially, this at level 70 will become, oh, there it is, inner release. So inner release will turn the next 3 uses of your fell cleave or your decimates, which is basically the AoE equivalent of fell cleave. It will turn them into basically guaranteed direct crits, and those are always good. So basically it's a big damage buff, and you always want to go ahead and use this pretty much almost on cooldown, unless you're using it during burst windows, because you can drift your GCDs or drift stuff, but it would depend on party output, and that's not something we're really going to get into. I just thought to mention it. Now, with because I was drifting off, back to arm's length. Arm's length, whenever you are hit, it actually puts a slow on enemies, and this barrier will last for 15 seconds. So a 15-second slow on enemies hitting you is always going to be good. I even did a dungeon where I went the whole dungeon without touching the bloodwetting, because every warrior uses bloodwetting, let's be honest. I did a whole dungeon where I did not use bloodwetting, and I only used Thrill of Battle along with Equilibrium, and I used Vengeance a couple of times, but I would always pair them off with Arm's Length, or I would combine Shake It Off with Arm's Length. You always want to have some type of mitigation on top of mitigation, essentially. Because the way that mitigation works in the game is that it's not additive, if that makes sense. So me using Vengeance, which is a 30% damage reduction, and Rampart, which is 20% damage reduction, that does not mean that this will be 50% damage reduction. It will be like maybe 35 or 40. Because you can't stack mitigation on top of each other, but you can stack shields and mitigation, and it would be additive. So if I used Thrill of Battle to give myself a barrier, and then I used Bloodwetting to give myself another barrier on top of mitigation, both of those barriers would stack, and the mitigation would stack. So the barrier would be harder to break, basically. So whenever you're getting barriers, wait for the barriers to be placed on you and then activate your mitigation, so that way you're getting basically the full effect. Or you can do the opposite if you're in the middle of combat. So with that pretty much being said, that it's pretty much everything. There's not really much to it. Now I do know that home gang is basically the get out of jail free card. I would say try to not have to use home gang. If you do have to use it, it more than likely may be due to your healer not paying attention or thinking that you can handle it when you probably can't. You will be using this button, and I would recommend that you do use it, so that way there'll be no problems. Or if you feel like your health is going down really fast, this will basically be the healer, come heal me button. And if they let you die at that point, you've done everything that you can do. There's not really anything else that you can do. Alright, so we're going to do a dungeon, and just so that way I don't get exactly what I want, I'll do a 50, 60, 70, 80. So that way I have no idea, and I will use what I have indicated to you guys to actually show what to do during these dungeon pulls. Because me just talking is just me talking. You have no idea what I'm doing. So I will explain everything that I'm doing in these dungeons, so that way the polls go correctly, there's no problems or anything. And I'll even explain dungeon mechanics while I'm at it. Okay, good, we got a 71. I know this one. This is Hell's Lid. This is the one you can go to in Stormblood, obviously, because it's 70. But this is more specifically, I think, when you fight the Four Lords. So I'm going to start with this. Now during this dungeon, there's no enemies here. Like, these are the only ones that are here. We need to get our Infuriate off, so that way we can get it on a timer. And we're going to use our Decimates. And we're going to use Inner Release, because we're doing our burst window, because you see the Astro just popped, like they're buff. So I want to get all the damage off, enemies dying, and they're dead. Easy. So easy, no problems. Now, during this point, there are going to be 4 bosses on each side, and I've got 2 charges. The first thing I want to do is charge the first one and get its health down, because more than likely the first one that I attack is going to be the one that people probably try to go for. And my goal is to make sure that all the enemies have me as like the main target. So I want to make sure that I'm hitting everything. At least 1 or 2 hits, so that way I maintain aggro. And again, use Upheaval on cooldown. If you look at Upheaval and it's ready, just use it. It doesn't matter, just use it. Alright, and like, we're rushing through this. But you see, every time I'm using my AoEs and whatnot, we're like pretty much set. And right now, we don't have Bloodwetting, but we have Raw Intuition, which is basically the same thing that I said before, but it just has the healing and the 20% damage mitigation. So we're effectively immortal and can't really die, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to pay attention to it. So we're going to actually, in this instance, drag the enemies over here, because there's a lot of AoE going on. We're going to pop Vengeance and pop our heal. So that way our healing is fine. So you see I've got 2 things going on here. This is basically stalling until my burst window is done. Use again Infuriate to make sure that the timer is ticking. You don't need to have it ticking. And then we've got our boss here. Now again, remember, do not start with your gap closer, because we have a Reaper. You're gonna charge and have the boss come to you. Don't go to the boss. The boss comes to you if you use your range. We're gonna get our timer back up, burst window, because you see Embolden is up there in the corner, the little sword. So that way we're getting as much damage off as we possibly can. I'm ignoring mechanics here. I need to be paying attention because I'm explaining. Avoid some of these. He's about to do his 100-ton swing, so get away from him. And then get close. And then look at this. Free heals for the party. So that way I'm contributing. Party's not, you know, too low on health. Again, use upheaval on cooldown because I saw it was available. Make sure that I'm doing as much damage as possible and that I'm not... Oh, see, he's not using the mechanic, so he died. He's going to swing, and then he's going to jump over to the next one and also swing, and I'm going to immediately go back in and try to do damage right back into my burst window. Like, basically use your gap closers like responsibly if you're trying to like just clear a dungeon as fast as possible. Because the faster that you clear a dungeon, the easier the chance of you getting commendations, because a tank that can clear really fast will always get commendations from their team. Like, at least around maybe 95% of the time they're going to give you a commendation. Also use your gap closers during pulls, so that way you make sure that you're ahead, because you don't want any of the DPSs or the healers ahead of you. Instead, just go faster, because a faster tank is going to be someone that, you know, everyone's looking at. They're like, okay, well, this person knows what they're doing. We're going to put arm's length up and look at this slow effect. See? There we go. Oh. I didn't even get to use my last decimate there. They died so quick. I did get that heal though. We're gonna use our last charge there of inner release, because it was just sitting there. But you always want to at least make sure that you're maintaining aggro. That's the most important part. That's just tanking in general though. You want to make sure that you always are maintaining like aggro. Combine my heals to make sure that I'm at full health, because the only reason that you would play as a warrior is essentially if you like really good burst windows, and if you like it just not really ever being able to die, because you can't really die. Like, it's possible, don't get me wrong, because like, I mean, if you look at my health is dropping, but like realistically I can do that and then activate inner release, and then, you know, I'm just back at full health, so the healer doesn't really have to worry about me. And then boom, that's done. Using sprint on cooldown, that's always the most important thing to do. Again, wait for everyone to be a rare, pull the boss to you. Sometimes other people may pull. That's the other reason why you want to use your range attack, because it stops them from being hit. We'll go ahead and heal. That equilibrium crit, so I almost full healed on top of the Astra healing me. Alright. We're not going to have enough time to use our burst window, but as you see, Embolden is up, so I'm going to do as much damage as I can and then immediately go for it. Because we're going to have enough time, and then we'll get our upheaval off, because again, it needs to stay on cooldown. And then make sure that our infuriates are also on cooldown. I really need to pay attention to the mechanics here. It's just been so long since I've even done this dungeon. Okay. Now this one I think is what you kill the ads. We need to kill the ads and then avoid the little circles, because he'll like zigzag like through those patterns there, and we need to be nowhere near them. Over here, because if you're in it, you take a vuln stack and you take damage. I'm a tank, so I can get away with it. That's the only reason why I'm not really worried. And then a raid wine is coming, so I'll protect my party, and see, took no damage really. So tanks, you know, have mitigation, you know, not only just for themselves, it's for the party as well. And then we're gonna wait to pop sprint because we've got a long fall here. Alright. Again, we're trying to make this dungeon as fast as possible. And we don't really need any gap closers, you know, during the ads. I realistically can just pull all of this. We'll combine some mitigations just to make it easier for the healing and also make it easier for myself. So that way I don't have to worry about dying. Okay, so there's that. All buffs are up, and I've got 9 seconds until my burst window. So we're gonna do as much damage as we can. And then when the buff disappears, oh, see that right there, perfect timing. I had the home gang because you see the healer wasn't paying attention. If I didn't pop home game there, I would have died. I most definitely would have died. Because if you look back, you'll probably have to rewind if you weren't watching. My health hit 0. Or rather, it didn't hit 0, but it hit 1. And then, you know, home gang stops your health from going lower than 1 for 10 seconds. And what makes it crazy is the fact that it's got a massive cooldown. I won't blame him though, because that was a hard pull. You need to get rid of all this stuff. Pull them all the way to the door. There's not really a reason. Oh, maintain aggro. Maintain aggro. Also, don't be afraid to use stun, because it stuns them. Especially since we don't have a white mage. If we had a white mage, don't ever use stun, because you're wasting their time, basically. Like, that's what they're there for. Again, I only missed 1 GCD there, because I used my gap closer. Also, do not overcap on your beast gauge. So, if you have 80 beast gauge and you're doing your full combo, and, you know, your second hit gives you 10, so you have 90, and you use Storm's Path to get to another 20, you can only go to 100. Don't overcap, because overcapping leads to wasted damage potential. That Astro didn't get me inside of their buff, but that's fine. Use upheaval. Go ahead and heal the party. Oh, I didn't catch the Astro. They were too far away. Get our damage off. See, I like this red mage. They're in sync with like what I'm doing, so they're doing their rotation pretty much on set. I'm not paying attention to mechanics. I'm just mostly trying to explain this. I believe that was the tank buster. Okay, so what happens here is the orb is going to go in the direction that those are pointing. So this, anything over here is safe, because it's going to go off. Also, make it a good habit to not spin bosses, because if you spin the boss, it makes the melees have a harder time, because melees typically have positionals that they have to be doing. And by spinning the boss, you're making it harder for them to hit their positionals, and therefore do more damage. And then after this, I will do 1 expert dungeon. Raid wide, didn't do any damage, just pop that, everyone's healed. The orb is there, so it's gonna go around basically. Full circle and go off. So I notice my health is going low. I mean, he's gonna die though, so I mean, it doesn't really matter. Here we go. Easy clear. I will calm that red mage because they were pretty much on point, like doing their rotations and whatnot. Like they were on point. The Astro did good too. I just didn't calm them because they did almost let me die. And I did get a calm. I don't really look for combinations though. I just look for clears. That's really the important part, is making sure that everyone clears the dungeon. No one dies to mechanics that, you know, were on me that I could have avoided. Alright. And we'll do one more here for this. Because again, me talking isn't going to explain it. Instead, we'll experience it. This is going to be pretty brain dead though, because I have access to everything. So you're going to see me spamming abilities. Oh, this is... I already know this one.
Once upon a time, there was a beautiful blue star.
Well, that is what I'll go ahead and end it at. Because I did just think, and these right here are spoilers, and I don't want to spoil it for y'all. So I will go ahead and actually probably pause it here, so that way you guys don't run into any spoilers that you're not wanting to see.